Ah, there you go.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the town hall budget hearing, and we're going to start off. And if you don't mind, I will offer the venture to anybody to run the meeting. But if we take it, I will continue on with the agenda. If there's no objections. All right. With that in mind, I'd like to call the meeting of the town hall budget hearing to order for Thursday, October 28, 2021 at 6 p.m. Please rise for the pledge of the allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Number 3, we get a certification of the voting on name list.
I certify that on Friday, October 8, 2021, the agenda for the Town of Rome budget hearing and special town board meeting for Thursday, October 28, 2021 was published in the Wisconsin Rapids Tribune on Tuesday, October 12th and October 19th. Posted at the Rome Town Hall at 10:10 a.m., at Fritzl's Trading Post at 10:25 a.m., and at Nakusa Port Edward State Bank at 10:20 a.m.
Thank you. In the meeting, we will have a section for folks to come up and ask questions. It will be after we present the budget. Hopefully, we'll answer most of the questions at that point. Anybody is free to come up and speak. We keep it to 3 minutes, please. State your name and your residence, and we'll move on from there. So, for 2020 budget hearing, let's turn over to Jamie for presentation of the 2020 budget.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Jamie Gabbert. I'm the town administrator. And I would love to think that my 3 previous years of budget hearings and how great they were, legendary, talk about them in the community is why you are all here tonight. But I also understand that there's a Packer game on at 7:20 and this is what's standing in your way of being ready for kickoff. So tonight I do want to give you an overview of the entire town budget. We will discuss some big projects and the exceeding of the levy limit that we're talking about tonight as part of that. I would just ask if we could hold questions till the end. We'll go through the whole presentation. And we do have handouts. My understanding is we're running short on copies, but we're making some more. If you could just jot down those questions and we'll take those all as a group after we do a presentation of the overall budget. After tonight, the budget is available online. Where it is located on our website is on that first slide. In addition to that, we also have a budget book available for viewing at all times at the front counter at Town Hall. So first, I always just like to give a little overview of all the items that we're talking about tonight and start with some major projects. I'm not going to go through all of these. The 2 that I really want to talk about are the Rome Town Center Park Development and then our intergovernmental agreement with Big Flats and Monroe to provide ambulance service and to create an EMS district, and the potential EMS agreement that we would enter into with Lifestyle. So first, there was a frequently asked questions that a lot of people in the audience here see our frequently asked questions concerning ambulance service was located on the town's website. That frequently asked questions goes into great depth about our intergovernmental agreement that we've entered into for an EMS district and the contract with Lifestar. These 2 slides are just really a brief synopsis of that overall timeline of where we're at. But earlier this year, we did have some concerns with our current ambulance provider. In addition, our current ambulance provider has downgraded service to a basic life support, a BLS ambulance, instead of an ALS ambulance or an advanced life support ambulance. They do have a flex agreement, so if there is a paramedic on staff that happens to be staffing the ambulance, they can operate at that level, but that's not a guarantee. It's just whenever a paramedic is there on staff. So town board discussed that between that downgraded service and that ambulance leaving our Rome station, we did have an MOU agreement with them to be stationed here in our ambulance and provide service. They withdrew that ambulance as of July 1 and said that it will not be back indefinitely. They did indicate to the town, which I know there had been some questions about funding or other things that we can provide. And our current ambulance provider has simply said it's not a matter of funding, we just don't have the staff, we cannot provide an ambulance in your station. Town board had strong conversations and healthy conversations about the fact that we want an ambulance here, we want an ALS, Advanced Life Support ambulance here, and that's why we reached out to other providers. Lifestar provided us a proposal and said we would prefer that you would go into an intergovernmental agreement with some neighboring municipalities, those being Big Flats and Monroe, who have both signed and agreed, so we would be a tri-town area to provide ambulance service to. In addition to ambulance service and that larger project, I also just want to touch base a little bit about our Rome Town Center development. So last year we bid that project to build a band shell and pavilion in Rome Town Center. It would be just south of the splash pad where you see the great lawn area. Those bids came back a little bit higher than we anticipated, and we determined that we were going to wait a year and rebid the project and work on fundraising. Since then, we have received 2 additional nice gifts, both $50,000 apiece from the Coosa Port Edward State Bank and from Stan Valley, and we'll rebid that project early this next year, January, likely, and start construction on that band shell. I bring this up because it's been an ongoing project, but also because the only levy that is part of our parks budget is the levy that pays for the insurance and the water for the splash pad. So there isn't levy in this construction project. These are donated funds or funds through tourism dollars. Depending on our conversations tonight, when we get to the vote about exceeding the levy, we would be able to exceed the levy. It's important to remember that what would need to be cut are levy expenses. So why I bring that up is a good segue into what the total budget for the town is. So total budget for the town this year is $6.7 million. You can see that it's a little bit down from last year, and I'm sure that's a question, like how can it be down? That's because we had some carry forward funds that we used last year in our highway department. It's about $200,000 of carry forward funds. So this year, we spent those, we did road improvement projects last year. We aren't carrying those forward. So overall budget is down a little bit, and the levy amount is up a little bit due to, one, keeping a strong road maintenance plan and because of the ambulance service. But it's just important to remember that if we would at some point need to make cuts, it would have to come from levy funded services. So I do always like to include our assessed and equalized value and net growth. So our assessed value is important because that's how we establish our mill rate or our tax rate. Our equalized value is important because that is how we get our TID increment for our tourism TIF, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, and our net new growth, which was 1.75%. Net new growth is important because since 2006, municipalities have only been able to increase their levy amounts by net new construction or 0%. So if we just took what we could increase, which is net new construction 1.75%, that would add an additional $27,000 to the budget, which would not be enough to cover the ambulance service, right? So I know oftentimes, and if you read the frequently asked questions prior to the meeting, people will say, I see all of this growth, right? That has to be adding tax base. It's adding tax base, but as a municipality, we can only increase by 0% our net new growth. So that's why tonight is the special vote to exceed the levy limit. So just covering a little bit more about our tourism TIDs. Again, our tourism TID is 3,600 acres. Of that, the Sand Valley development is 1,400 acres. A question we often get is the new Lido Conservancy project. Is that part of the TIF? And it is not. That 800 acres is outside of the TIF area. So the number for the TIF, the current value for the TIF this year, you're going to see decrease just a little bit. The TIF is still, and I apologize if I say TID and then TIF, because one's a tax increment district or tax incremental financing district. It means the same thing, so I apologize, sometimes I'm a government geek, right? I just lose myself in the acronyms. But, so the tourism TID, while it did lose a little value, that was due to an error in personal property accounting. It is still very strong, and it is scheduled to close 2 years early. So what we're talking about tonight is the town's proposed tax rate. I think it's important to remember when you receive your tax bill, it's 5 parts. It's your state and county tax, it's the school district tax, it's the technical school tax, and it's the town. Sometimes it's 6 here in Rome if you're part of the Tri-Lakes area. But what we're talking about tonight is the town portion of your 5-part, sometimes 6, tax bill. And I do have a proportionate slide up there of where those other tax entities fall as far as your overall tax bill. But tonight we would be proposing to have a levy of $3,423,067. And I do have some a mathematical equation of what that would mean for every $1,000 of assessed value on that slide, which we'll talk a little bit more in just a moment. I like to include just the tax levy comparison, just to show that we've stayed fairly level through the years on both our tax levy and our debt service levy. So just talking a little bit more about revenues and expenditures. First, 2022 revenues. Last year we were about 47% tax levy. This year we'd be 50% tax levy. You can see the breakdown in our other funding sources. Again, the levy is the $3.4 million. The overall budget is the $6.7. Expenditures for last year, just a little bit about how that breaks down. And again, expenditures, you can see there, public works 21%, public safety 24%. So just a little bit of graphical representation of 2021 to 2022. I just want to point out the difference on this slide in your intergovernmental revenues. That decrease is due to a decrease in construction next year in Derrick Hughes. There is no tax levy in Derrick Hughes recreational area. It's the largest ATV, UTV, and motorcycle park in the state. And it is funded all through user fees and DNR grants. So last year we did a big expansion to Derrick Hughes. We did 40 miles of trail, we did a challenge course, and we did a 4-acre sample. It's awesome if you haven't been out there. So that was all funded through DNR grants, and those we don't expect those revenues this year because we aren't doing those projects. As far as expenditures go, I just want to point out the decrease in capital outlay. Again, that's because of Derrick Hughes, because those improvements are their long-term investments, and we wouldn't be doing that much construction out there this next year. That decrease in public works is because we don't have that $200,000 of carry forward. That was a one-time. We had that one time because we had a vacancy in our public works department in the director position. We just didn't get out as many road bids that year. I got a lot of expertise. I did not have the level of expertise in road bids, but we did spend those funds and get those projects completed last year, but we won't always have that carry forward. And then in public safety, you're gonna see that increase, and that's in the creation of a separate account for the EMS district and for that ambulance contract. I always like to include a slide about the water utility, their revenues and expenditures for the year. Again, important to note, there's no levy in the water utility. That is user funded, but you just like to represent their revenues and expenses. Yep. So a little bit about themes and focus areas. Again, I understand 7:20 kickoff, I'm not reading these slides verbatim. I just always like to provide, this is our budget and brief document, I always like to provide a little bit about what's going on in all of the departments. So a little bit more about general government. You're gonna see in there that we've set aside funds this year and are targeting to set them aside again next year to do an interim market update reevaluation. So we're at a position where we need to do a reevaluation. When your evaluation falls outside of a 10% range, your assessor says it's time. So a market evaluation is looking at previous sales and working with your assessor to bring your assessment totals up. So we're budgeting half of that cost next year and the next half in 2023 when that interim market evaluation would be completed. Also, we do have funds set aside next year to update this room. We do get a lot of comments that the sound quality in this room is not great. We need to add some speakers and a new mic system, and we would also improve its aesthetics a little bit. It's great, but it could be better. Orange is out now. So, under public safety, again, the major piece there is the adding of the ambulance contract and the providing of ALS ambulance, paramedic level ambulance, 24/7, 365 out of our Rome station, but responding to Rome, Big Flats, and Monroe. Public Works and Health and Human Services. Again, this budget represents keeping a strong road plan maintenance plan in progress. A strong road maintenance plan in progress. It does have the purchase of a mastic machine to help with road maintenance. And it would include paving of the new entry into the transfer site. What it would discontinue at the transfer site is the taking of electronic devices, TVs and computers. That's just a market where we cannot be competitive. It costs us much more to recycle them than what we're taking in. And so we would provide to anyone that would need to recycle electronics where they could go with those goods, but it's just not something that we can stay competitive in continuing to take them at the transfer site. Under culture and recreation, again, I just want to point out that we had all those construction projects at Derrick Hughes next year. We won't be doing that much construction at Derrick Hughes this year. And the budget does include the start of the construction of that band shell pavilion in Rome Town Center with that additional $100,000 donation that we received. Conservation and development, the budget includes a market adjustment to our zoning administrator position. It was time to look at that position overall and just to stay competitive in the market. I think a lot of us have been experiencing it's hard to find people and keep people, and so that position was a little out of scale with our neighboring municipalities, and so it has increased in it to bring it to scale. And I always like to note just our 70-30 split with Visit Rome as our destination marketing organization, and those estimates for next year are included here. Lastly, under capital outlays, in the budget are American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds. You might have heard that talked about in the news. All municipalities received some ARPA funding. That's restricted funding. It has to be used for COVID-related expenses or water, sewer, broadband. So the town board has started a conversation about potentially what those funds would be used for, but we'll continue that conversation in the next year. Those funds have to be committed for expenditure by 2024, but they don't have to be spent until 2026. I always like to just include a slide about where we are with our debt service, with the loans essentially that the town has. So this is where we are with our overall debt service levy and the loans that we have out with the town. And I like to talk about our general fund balance. So the town does have a policy that we need to keep 17% of our unassigned fund balance at all times. And you can see this past year we had 29%. Again, that was a big piece of that was because of that carry forward in highway. So we do expect that fund balance to decrease. That's an expected decrease next year, but we are maintaining our 17% in fund balance. So lastly, this is my favorite slide. It's where do your town of Rome property tax dollars go? So as you can see at the top, the median home value right now in the town of Rome is just a little over $200,000. That's provided by the U.S. Census. And that would equate, again, we're talking just your town of Rome portion of the overall tax bill, that would equate to $1,072 a year, and you're $89.40 a month. And then I've just broken it down based on expenditure on a monthly basis of what that means within departments. So on a monthly basis, $42.90 goes to police, fire, and EMS, $42.90. And buildings and grounds and cemeteries, $2.61. Our library, which I know tons of people love and utilize, $6.14 a month to have our wonderful library. And I just have included there on the side, using a living wage calculator, for one adult in Adams County, what monthly costs are right now averaging for housing, transportation, and groceries. So it really shows the value of the overall town tax dollar. With that, I would say back to the chairman, thank you, and I'll open it up for questions.
That closes the budget hearing section. We are open for questions, so please, if you have a question, raise your hand. Come up to the podium, again, keep 3 minutes. Your name and your residence. Questions?
I think what I'll do is just move this mic out here.
Hurry up.
You want to step up to the mic just so everyone can hear you and they can hear you on the TV.
Tell me if there's any questions.
We also have all of the town of Rome, well, most, I shouldn't say, but almost all of the town of Rome department heads here. Amy Reutemann's our clerk treasurer. Wave. We have Chief Jason Levy, our police chief. We have our interim fire chief, Mark Kane. Greg Bainey is our Bronick. Greg was sitting up here. Cut it out of the corner of my head. Greg Bronick is our zoning administrator. Brad Martinson is our director of public works. Did I miss anybody? Okay.
Does everybody know the board up here? We start from the left. Everybody knows Jerry Portman. Go ahead.
Jerry Wiesner. Dan Mitchell.
Carl Haslam.
Dan Golden.
Bob Howard.
James? One of the things, Lonnie, you did mention the, I'm trying not to speak tonight. Mention the library. What was our turnover there at the library? How many people actually came into the library? I was astounded. Do you remember? Somebody here remember what that was?
I could find it very quickly. Hold on.
Okay, several tens of thousands. 40,000. All right, if we have no further questions? Okay, come on up.
The ambulance service, I'd like to know how, undoubtedly we have to sign a contract with Laystar. How long a contract are we gonna get into with Laystar?
We're looking at a 3-year contract with the same cost in year 1 and year 2. Year 3 would be a 3% increase.
Okay.
I would just add to that we're looking at a 3-year contract because just to the south of us is the Adams County Ambulance District, who has also provided service through Lifestar. Their contract comes up at 2023, and we've learned through this process we are a much stronger unit together than as single municipalities. And so they down there are represented by about 11,500 citizens, and if we would negotiate at the same time, we would have even better bargaining because it would be representing such a large portion of Adams County. That was another reason to do 3 years to coincide with them. And I believe I saw Michael from Lifestar here. So if anyone has specific questions related to the service or related to paramedic service, Michael from Lifestar is here and could answer those. And I should also point out Nick Flanagan, our town attorney, contracted the attorney. Don't forget to thank the attorney.
Is there any other questions on the budget? Any questions? Oh, yes, Lori.
Lori Samadi, 1647 Hornet Trail. I had a question regarding, we didn't have the expenditure side, but I recall seeing it online. Other than the general transportation aids for road improvements this year, it looks like you're only budgeting another another $25,000 towards road improvements. And I know earlier in the year we had you all state after the election that one of your main priorities was road improvements. So is there other money built into this budget somewhere? Because some of our main roads are starting to look pretty worn and broken up and need some repair. So are you planning on more than just GTA money? Thank you.
Jim, you want to handle it, Brad?
So GTA did take a 2% increase on overall towns in the state this last year. The Wisconsin Towns Association lobbied hard for that 2%, and all of that is included as expenditures for next year. And the overall levy, besides the GTA for highway, would be $828,000 next year. So we plan, that's overall levies, $828,000 in highway. For road improvements, and that we have slotted, I think, 4.6 miles of road next year to be improved. Yeah. But 2% in GTA, the overall towns were excited to get 2%. Last year we did receive 8%, but we received 2% this year. And just always to note, GTA has an interesting, you have to spend the money in order to get it, so if you wouldn't spend at least that much or more as the municipality, you would not receive as much in GTA funds. It isn't so much an issue for us, but for smaller towns, it's a hardship in order to spend those funds.
Don?
Donna Hasdell, 241 Penhurst. I have a question regarding the room tax funds. That 70% goes to Visit Rome, and I understand that that has to be spent on tourism. The other 30% comes to the town, which understand that the Parks and Recreation is being funded with those tourism dollars. It's not part of the levy. However, are there restrictions on where that money can be spent? Because I understand, like next year with Sand Valley continually growing, that pot of money is going to continue to grow, our 30%. And if that is all going to be spent, you know, if that can be put into the budget as revenue in near years.
So you are correct that our room tax is 8%. That's charged to the guest that stays in the room. That's both for our short-term rentals and with our any hotels, motels, including Shermalon, including Sand Valley. So it is a 70-30 split that is required by statute. That 70% has to go to a destination marketing organization. We have Visit Rome here locally, so that 70% stays in the town of Rome. If we didn't, it would go to Adams County the tourism entity. So our 30% is, it has been used to fund the parks, but there aren't, that 30% is the towns. So it can be put back into the general fund at the end of the year to help offset expenses. We also this year entered into an investment contract with Ellers, who we've done a lot of work with and who manages our TIF, in order to get a better return on those dollars if invested. Where we don't ever lose on what we invest, but we do get a lot more interest than if they would just be in a bank. So that 30% is the towns. It's at our discretion. And the library circulated just under 18,000 adult items and 8,000 child items last year.
Any other questions? No? Go ahead.
I'll just run them together. What is the plan for the town for the use of the estimated $435,000 of NFL land that was taken out? I believe you received it late last year. What is the intent on that land and how might that ease our budget a little bit? And the other question had to do with, according to the budget we received, all $197,000 that you're asking for is shown under the EMS budget. However, in the explanation and facts, it's explained that some of that's going to go for a massive machine and some of that's going elsewhere. So that amount's all showing in the EMS bucket on your budget. Thank you.
So I'm not sure if everyone heard the first question, MFL. So if you enroll land into MFL, you're committing to a certain amount of years. If you end up wanting to develop that land and you take it out of managed forest land, you have to pay the tax from day one. We did have some larger properties that took it out of MFL. When we receive that check for the back tax, 20% of it automatically has to go to the county. We have to, because we have to receive their portion of it. So the funds that we received last year, again, they're invested through Ellers in order to keep a ladder, so we always have income in order to make bills, and they go right to the general fund. So you are correct, we did receive some funds last year. A lot of, I couldn't tell you what percentage of that was because of the 800 acres that was withdrawn for the Lido, but those funds come right back into the general fund. The secondary question, so I understand the numbers are the same, like when you look at the overall levy, if you would take into account that we were contracted for ambulance service, if you subtract off what we pay currently for ambulance service, which is less, about 150,000 could be equated to the increased cost for ambulance service, and the rest, again, strong road maintenance budget with the purchase of that mastic machine, and just overall cost increase. I mean, gas, equipment, supplies, insurance. I think we've all experienced that in our personal lives, certainly with fuel and groceries. It just overall increase in expenses. So I think you could equate approximately 150 EMS, and the rest is, yeah.
The number was coincidental, actually. Any more questions? We will discuss discussion and possible action on the following items. Number 6, consideration of November 19th. Yes, close the budget. Oh, we have to close the budget. I missed it. Okay. Number 5, close the budget hearing and take a vote on that. Mr. Attorney? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. The motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Wendy made the motion and Bill Kaplan made the second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. We'll take a hand count. Or just a... Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, discuss and possible action on the following items. Number 6, consideration of November 19th, 2020 budget hearing and special town meeting minutes. Somebody has offered a motion? We have a motion in a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Number 7, authorize appropriation of funds for civic and other functions pursuant to section 60.10, section 3, subsection B of the Wisconsin statutes for Veterans Day and community donation. Can I get a motion, please? Kathy? Okay. Okay. Any discussion?
I always like to point out every year at this one, if you don't separate your aluminum cans at the transfer site, please do, and put them into that separate container. This is how we get the funds to give to community groups and to sponsor the Veterans Dinner. We do it off the proceeds we make from the aluminum. So if you don't separate your aluminum cans, please do, and put them into that separate holder at the transfer site, because it goes to help tons of community groups through the years.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Number 8, a resolution of the town electors pursuant to Wisconsin statute 66.0602, section 5, endorsing the town board's resolution, which proposes that the town levy exceed the state allowable levy limit for 2021. Should it be 2022? Is that 2022 or 2021? by 6.107% for a dollar increase of $197,000. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll second.
Lori Kimani and Bill Kettle.
All those in favor? Oh, any discussion, please?
If I could,
Go ahead.
so, with this being a town meeting, you all as electors make a decision on household. And of course, some of these items, things like, approving the previous meeting minutes, those are going to be things that probably by acclamation we do. In this case, all of you have received, cards, red and green. Wendy's holding them up for you. It is all your decision on how we vote. However, to get a good count on this, an accurate count on this, I would recommend that we vote using those cards on ones like, frankly, this one as well as number 9 and really the 10th one.
Okay, so all those in favor, raise your green card.
Raise your paper card. So I'm sorry, we have to do it one more time. We have to actually provide a vote to the.
All right. All those opposed, please raise a red card. Red card. Good evening. That was your wife. 120, yes. Okay. So the motion is carried. Thank you, folks. You will now have a premium service here in town. Number 9, to approve the 2021 town tax levy of $3,423,067 to be paid in the 2022 pursuant to section 60.101A of the Wisconsin statute. Can I get a motion?
Who was reading it?
Wendy was the motion.
So just for clarification, because we're voting, we had to vote to exceed the levy. The vote you just took said we can exceed the levy. This vote says you agree to the total levy, which is at 3.4.
Any discussion? Do we have a hands-on on this acclamation?
You can do whatever you would like. Given that we had a unanimous here.
We will do by acclamation.
Otherwise, you can start with the no's and then hold up the yeses.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Number 10, a resolution for specific grant authority from the town electors pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 60.10, subsection 2, subsection G, authorizing the town board of the town of Rome to sell a 2.270 acre parcel of property, also described as section 22, township 20, north, range 5, east, lot 1, of certified survey May 59, map 5984, town of Rome, Adams County, Wisconsin, with a property identification number of 030-01613-0000.
I can take this, Mr. Chairman, just to give a little bit of background. I won't talk at length to this, but I do just want to go into a little bit of why you have this on your agenda. So there are certain direct powers, grants of authority that the electors have in a municipality. One of those grant of authority powers is for the disposal of real property. Back in 2016, the town had received this property from Adams County during a foreclosure proceeding. This property in question had received a substantial amount of special charges on it due to cleanup that had to be done after a fire. So because of that, it went into foreclosure. Ultimately, when it went into foreclosure and it went back to the county reached out to the town back in August or September of 2016. I think it was August of 2016 the county reached out. In September, the town board considered it and accepted receiving the property. The town received that property at a cost of a survey and 2 recording costs, so survey plus $60. But of course, there was a significant amount of cleanup costs that were specially charged, and the town didn't collect on it. So, of course, it made sense to receive that property so that if it was ever sold off, it would be offset with the amount that the town had expended on it. That brings us here. So we had a offer that was received to purchase the property. Of course, that triggered the conversation that we can't dispose of real property without approval, authorization to do so by the electors. That authorization does just that, right? It allows the town board to dispose of the property. It doesn't set the amount or the means of disposing of the property, although certainly you can opine on how that parcel would be disposed of. But really, I just mentioned that we received an offer because that was really the trigger point to requesting from you, the electors, whether or not there would be authorization to dispose of this property at all. Are you familiar, is everybody familiar with where this property is?
No.
16th and Apache, I'm sorry.
I wasn't suggesting you should have it.
I'm sorry?
It was a new house, a light blue house, on the corner of 6th and back.
That's correct.
So, east corner of that.
Bill, I think you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just would suggest, you know, you put something like this on an agenda, you had a map so that people know where it is. Because nobody's gonna go down and look up the certified number.
Noted. There's somebody in the back, yes, go ahead.
Can you tell me what the zoning is on that property?
I don't know that offhand. I don't. I'm guessing residential, it's 2 acres, so it's probably not ag.
Yeah, R2.
R2.
We're fairly certain it's R2.
Okay, R2 residential.
Does that mean if it's authorized that it'll go up to bid then?
So it doesn't necessarily mean that it will go out to bid, although, so there's other things that you can do as electors. One of those would be, and it would be advisory, but you can inform the board of how you'd like to see this property disposed of. So one, the authority you have is to grant the authorization to dispose of the property, but you certainly can also provide input to the board on the means of doing so.
Is an auction out of the question for that property to go up? I mean,
An auction, you mean
No.
receiving bids, or?
yeah, receiving bids, yes.
It's not out of the question at all.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, I will hand it back over to you.
We do a motion, correct?
You will.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve?
And within your motion, if you're granting this authorization, you have a resolution that should have been provided to you. A grant of authority needs to be through adoption of the resolution. So I'd ask that if you are making a motion to approve this, that motion include approving or authorizing it by approving the resolution.
I'll move that we grant the special authority to sell that piece of property as described in number 10, and request that the board do it by sealed bid, be open at a town board meeting.
We have a motion, can we get a second, please? Any further discussion?
Thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion for adjournment? Move. All right, we got Larry Ellison. And, any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried.